In this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare a basic tax return step by step. What is up, Money and Life TV family? It is so good to see you. If you're joining us for the first time, be sure to subscribe. I've made numerous tax videos on this channel over the past 3 years, but never one like this. There are so many people out there across the United States who have very basic tax filing situations, and in my opinion, they're paying way too much to get their taxes done. What does it cost now? That's the last time I heard. It's about $400 to get your taxes done if your tax return's like even super simple. That's way too damn much. So let me just walk you through this, and I'm going to show you a quick example of a person who files single. All they have is a W-2, and Chipper is going to be the example, so we're going to use dummy numbers, but that doesn't matter because you ain't no dummy, because you're about to save a lot of money in tax prep fees, and it's only going to take you a few minutes to understand this. And as we're diving into the video, if you guys want to support the work I do on this channel, of course, dropping a like will help a ton. If you want to leave a comment, that's going to help a lot. But the greatest compliment you can give me, and the way to really support the work I do on this channel, is to share the hell out of this information with others and help get this information out there to more people, because there's so many people who could save hundreds of dollars every year just by not having to go pay an accountant to do a simple tax return when you can do it yourself. And by the way, guys, in case you didn't know, there are a ton of ways to file your tax return for free, especially if your income is under $69,000. And you can actually, I've made a video about this in the past, but it's on the IRS website. I'll leave a link directly to this page. And within this link, you're going to find, if you click here, there's a ton of different software packages available to you, such as TaxAct, TaxSlayer, TurboTax has some options, even the H&R Block software packages, I think, are in there. So there's a lot of tools and software packages that you can use for free. There may be a few additional fees in there, like when you actually go to e-file it, but they're very minimal, and I would say it's probably the cheapest way possible to get your taxes done using software other than filling it out by hand, which I just do not recommend. There's too many calculation errors that can go wrong. This is the form we're looking at, as a 1040. Now this is just an example, but your situation may be very similar to Chipper's here, which we're gonna walk through. Now, it doesn't matter what software package you use. I'm not going to, promote any particular software package. To me, that doesn't matter. What matters is, at the end of the day, regardless of what software package you use, it's going to spit out those numbers and information on a tax form such as this. And this is what actually gets filed with the IRS. The importance of this video and why I want to make it is to help you understand the numbers that are appearing on this form from this example. And I think that's where the real lack of knowledge comes from, because anybody can walk through a software package now, especially something like TurboTax, which is really well designed to walk you through step by step and asking you basic questions about your income, your life, your filing status, and all this and that and the other. But what happens is people put those inputs in and it spits that information out on their tax forms. But the problem is, a lot of people still don't understand what those numbers actually mean or how this actually works. And so that's really what I want to focus on in this video, is to really help you understand what the forms should look like. The thing that actually, the thing that actually goes to the IRS, that's the important part, regardless of what software package you're using. And I don't recommend filling this out by hand. You can if you want, but it can be fairly complex if you have a more involved kind of tax situation. Now, if you're a single filer, this is going to be, you're going to look at this, you're going to be like, I can't believe this is this easy, but it actually is. If I'm not doing a married filing jointly example in this video, but just know that if you had two people working, the process would be exactly the same, except the amount of wages you report, if two people have, a job, or both people are working, would just be higher, and the amount of your standard deduction would be higher. But other than that, the process is identical to somebody who's filing single. So let's walk through this form for you so you understand what this means. So the first thing, when you come here, you mark if you're single, which basically indicates you're not married. So if that's you, you're gonna check mark the single box. I'm gonna ignore these other filing statuses for now because that's not part of this example. You're gonna put your name, you're gonna put your last name here. I actually had to generate a real social security number in order to get these forms to print, and so that's why I have this crossed off for this video. So clearly, I want to avoid identity theft. It's going around, I hear. It's going around. But obviously, when you file it, this will not be crossed off in black because the IRS needs that number to identify who you are. Right here is still self-explanatory. You're going to put your address information, where you live, so on and so forth. This section of the form, they really want to know more information about you. Like, can somebody else claim you? So basically, if you're filing a tax return, you're probably over the age of 17. But you may still be living at home while you're working a part-time job or full-time job, whatever it may be. So they want to know if somebody else can claim you, and if they can, you would indicate here. The next section of this form is talking about the standard deduction, which we're going to look at that in a minute, but that's a set number you get every single year to help reduce your taxable income, which, like I said, we're going to get there in just a second, but it wants to know if you're a dependent of somebody else. So maybe you're over the age of 18, but maybe you live at home with your parents still. Maybe they're still claiming you. Maybe you're going to college, whatever it may be. But you would indicate if somebody else can claim you here. And of course, right here in this section, we talk about dependents. But in this example, we're assuming that the person filing this tax return has no kids. So we would just skip this and move on. Now let's talk about the income. Now this is where we really start getting into the numbers of the tax return. Chipper has a W-2, and I know this is just an example, but I want you to think of this as your W-2 to understand how this works. So let me pop this up real quick. 1 second. So this is what the W-2 looks like. And by the way, your employer should give you this or issue this to you by January 31st of every year. If they haven't, make sure to request it from them because they owe it to you, especially by this point at which I'm filming this video. I've highlighted certain aspects of this information so it can really stand out. But the one number that's really going to affect your taxes is in box 1. It's $53,000 as how much in wages Chipper has in box 1. So this is the number that's actually going to affect your tax return. But let me just walk through the other numbers real quick because they're still going to have an impact, as you're going to see. In box 2, that's how much this person withheld or Chipper withheld is $4,600 of income taxes withheld throughout the year on the paycheck. So when somebody says I've paid in this much tax throughout the year from my paycheck, this is that total number of the amount of federal income taxes they've had withheld throughout the entire year on their paycheck, and which is going to get reported on this tax return, as we're going to see. In box 3, there's Social Security wages of $62,000. You're thinking, why is it different than the amount in box 1? We're going to cover that. Just give me a minute. Hold on. Hang in there with me, guys. Hang in there with me. Box 4 is the amount of Social Security tax withheld that is transferred to the Social Security Administration. The Medicare wages and tips is $62,000 as well, and then the Medicare tax withheld from your paycheck in total from the whole year. And by the way, the W-2 basically summarizes all of these elements that you see being taken out of your pay stubs throughout the year, all of it into one form. That is what the W-2 is. It summarizes all the wages you've made, all the taxes you had withheld, and so on and so forth. So in 12A, there's so many different codes that may show up here, but 12A, what that is employer health insurance. That the amount of health insurance premiums your employer has paid on your behalf so you can have medical insurance. 12B, code D, that is the 401k. Now, who out there is investing? Well, if you're an investor, this is something that once you start putting money into your 401k plan, this is actually what you're going to see in total for the year of how much you've put into that 401k plan during that tax year. That number is going to show up right here in box 12B. It's going to be code D, and in this example is $8,500. In 12C, code W, that's actually a person. Now, have you heard of health savings accounts? Once you know what a health savings account is, you'll probably love it. But if you have a health savings account, that number will show up right there of how much you may have been contributing through your employer or how much your employer has contributed to that plan. It's going to show up in box 12C, code W. All right. So now there's a state section down here. Well, I'm going to come back and cover that at the end of the video as bonus content if you kind of want to see how there are some differences between federal and state income taxes. But I'll say that for the latter part of this video as bonus content if you guys want to check that out. All right. So how does this actually work? Well, why are some of these numbers different? Why? Because TurboTax isn't going to explain that to you. But let me explain this to you. All right, so in total, in box 3, we see we have Social Security wages of $62,225.11, okay? In box 1, we see we have wages and tips of $53,725.11. So if I subtract one from the other, the difference is $8,500. So by putting money in your 401k, what you're doing is that $8,500, it gets included in your Social Security wages, so Social Security Administration knows how much you've earned every single year. But for income tax purposes, this is nice. That $8,500, is it a tax deduction? No. But it kind of is, because that money gets deferred. So that the tax you would pay on that money gets deferred well into the future. When you're older and start taking that money out, that's when that money starts being taxed. But for right now, it's not. And since you've contributed to it, your taxable wages, which shows up in box 1, is only $53,000, which is why it's the difference between these two numbers right here. And obviously your HSA helps offset some of your federal income taxes as well if you're contributing to an A. Now that we've educated ourselves on the W-2, because nobody ever did in school, now we can move forward and figure out how this transfers to the tax return and what it means. In box 1 is where you would enter your total wages and salaries and tips from box 1. So that's, in this case, $53,725. We're assuming this taxpayer has no other income items for interest or dividends or anything else. So we carry that number down to line 7B, which totals lines 1 through 6, or lines 1 through 7A. And so that amount just gets carried down. That amount carries down further to $53,725. If you really want to see how this works, you'd want to read this form line by line, and you can understand why we're carrying these totals down. But because there's no other activity here, it's pretty simple. The numbers just carry down in total at these different sections on the form. Number 9 is where a lot of confusion kicks in for a lot of people, is they see the standard deduction thing showing up in their software. They don't really know what it means. Well, in taxes, you can either itemize deductions or you can take standard deduction. The good news is you get to take what is ever most favorable for you. Whatever is most favorable. And if you want to learn about itemized deductions, I have a whole video on that. I've done it in 2018, but the forms are still exactly the same even in 2019, 2020. I'll link that video if you want to learn about itemized deductions if you do itemize. But assuming you take the standard deduction, now Chipper is not elderly, he's not blind or disabled or anything like that, so he just gets the basic standard deduction for what it is. And for a single person in 2019, it's $12,200. It would be more if you're elderly or blind or have some other elements, but for a normal healthy person who's younger, it's going to be $12,200 for those who file single. The standard deduction is a set amount of tax deduction you get every single year. It usually goes up a little bit every single tax year, and you're going to love it because it's actually going to help save you on taxes, and it's like a tax freebie is kind of how I think about it. In this example, we had $53,000 in wages, so now we get to reduce that amount by $12,200. It reduces Chipper's total taxable wages in this example down to $41,525, which shows up on line 11B. So what that means, on line 8B, Chipper's adjusted gross income was $53,000, right? But in total, from a taxable income standpoint, because of the standard deduction, he's only going to pay taxes not on $53,000, but only $41,525. That's his real taxable income, and that is the amount of income he's going to pay tax on. Let's go down to the next page, and we're just about done here, guys. I'm not going to run through the calculation, but your software company or software pack you're using is going to calculate this tax amount for you. Based on that income of $41,000 of taxable income, it cranks out a tax of $4,994 in this example, okay? Now, if this was you, let's pretend you had withheld nothing from your paycheck the entire year. You didn't have any taxes taken out of your paycheck for income taxes. Well, that is the amount of money you would have to cut in a check to the IRS. But luckily, most of you fill out a W-4 and have taxes withheld from your paycheck throughout the year, so that you don't have to pay this amount all at once, plus penalties. Because if you didn't pay anything in throughout the year, you're probably going to have some penalties on top of this. Luckily, since you've been withholding throughout the year, you may have a refund or you may owe. So let's see what happens in this example. Now let's go back to the W-2, because another number from that W-2 is going to appear on the form here, and that number is line 17. From line 17 is federal income taxes withheld from forms W-2 is $4,679. And that is showing up from right here, and that's from W-2 box 2. So what this means is this is the amount of tax withheld from your paychecks throughout the entire year. and that is what helps offset your total tax liability. But did we withhold enough in this example to not owe tax? Unfortunately, no, because our total tax liability is what? It's $4,994. We only withheld $4,679. Therefore, we're gonna owe $315. So because I take $4,994, the tax liability minus how much we paid in federal income taxes, leaves us owing the IRS $315, and that shows up on line. It carries down to line 23. Now, at this point, if we owe, we can pay it in two ways. We can write a check to the IRS, and if we want to send a check, there's a voucher that you would send with it. You would send a 1040V voucher, and this is what it looks like. You would list your social security number here. You'd list the dollar amount. You would list the tax year on your check of what it's for, and it'd be listed here too. It's like shows for tax year 2019. It's very important you have the right tax year when you're paying this, and then you would just mail this check in. And the mailing instructions are right here on the back of this of the 1040V. It tells you where you should mail this in based on the state you live in. Or if you don't like to pay via check, which I'm personally not a fan of paying by check, I just go to the irs.gov website and I can pay directly my tax bill there. And that's how I pay my estimates. That's how I pay my taxes. It's far faster, I think, more efficient than doing it this way. Now, if you're lucky, if you withheld more than you needed to, you're going to have a refund. So let's just say that instead of, let's say your total tax liability was $4,994 based on your taxable income of $41,000, but let's say you withheld, $6,000. So if you withheld $6,000, your refund would be $6,000 minus $994, and so you would have like a $1,000 refund basically. And you, instead of owing, you would have a refund. And if you wanted to get your refund as quickly as possible, then I would suggest you fill out this banking routing information right here. And that you would put your routing number, and you'd put your account number here, your checking account, and that money will get deposited into your account as soon as possible once the IRS processes your tax return. And that is by far the fastest way to get a refund if you have a refund. There's no other quicker way to do it. It could take weeks for them to mail you a check. But if you have direct deposit set up, it's going to really help you get your refund as soon as possible. It could just take a few weeks. Of course, when you're going to go file this now, usually I would suggest electronic filing. It's safer, it's more secure, and it's instantaneous. But you could, if you wanted to print this out and mail it, you could. You just sign it, you'd enter the date you sign, your occupation, and then you would basically just mail this off to the IRS. And if you're not sure of where to mail it, you could look at the 1040 instructions. They would basically lead you or guide you of where to mail this off. But if you're using software, usually the software company or package will then guide you to the next step, which is the e-filing process, and you can file your tax return right there in the software, and it will transmit it to the IRS for you so you don't have to. You might pay a small fee, like $20, $25, $40. I don't know what it is, but it's super small. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you use a free tax software filing company because your income's under $69,000, your taxable income is under $69,000, then it's probably all going to be free. And if there are a few fees, well, then you're still doing it as cheap as possible. I guarantee you that. Other than if you were to actually mail this in by hand or fill this out by hand, which you could do. I don't always recommend it, but you could totally do it if you wanted to. Just real quickly, guys, some bonus content, just so you have an understanding that there are a lot of differences in tax rules between federal and state. As you can see here on the W-2 is a perfect example of that, whereas the state wages is $55,000 and the wages and tips up here is $53,000. Well, why is that? Well, like, for example, California has a lot of rules that it doesn't conform with federal. So federal has one set of rules, California has a different set of rules, and it gets really confusing really fast. And each state can differ from federal income taxes. I'm sure you know if you file state tax returns regardless of where you live. But for example, in this case, the difference between this amount in box 16 and box 1 is $1,765, which is the HSA amount. Because California doesn't recognize HSA contributions as a taxable deduction. It says, no, you can't deduct that. We're going to include that in your wages. Therefore, you're going to pay taxes on your wages for California of amount of $55,000 versus $53,000. And if we look at the forms real quick, I'm not really going to go into detail, but if I go to the California forms, if you give me like 1 minute here, guys, I think you're going to find a value in this. If I scroll down, here's the California forms. You can see here that there's my state wages appearing in box 12, and this is California form 9540, by the way. You're going to see It's showing my federal wages right here, 53,000. California adjustments, additions, which means additions to your taxable income of 1,765, which is the HSA amount we just looked at. And if we follow this down, what ends up happening for Chipper in this example is he ends up getting a refund, because in total on box 71, line 71, in which you'll probably remember that number right here, 2,604.65, that is how much state income tax he had withheld on his wages. And luckily, in this case, he ended up withholding more than he needed to. So he actually gets a state refund from California of $727. So it's very possible that you may end up owing to federal, but you may get a refund for state. You might get a refund from both federal and state. It just depends on what your total tax liability is. This is what I tell people about when they ask me questions about refunds. You know, your refund is really going to be affected by what happens with your total tax, okay, and how much you paid in. Like, it's not going to magically go up because your total amount of tax is going to be what it's calculated to be. That's going to be your total tax liability. But I mean, if you paid in $1 million and you only had $4,000 in tax, well, then you're going to get basically $1 million back. But if you paid in the exact amount of money as your tax liability, then you're probably not going to get anything back. You're going to have a net zero result. And that's why your income can fluctuate from year to year. But if you want to understand why it's happening, always look at your total taxes on line 12A. I should say on line 16, really. Sorry, line 16, because you might have some tax credits up here. But always look at your total tax on line 16, and then look at how much you paid in throughout the year from your wages, from maybe you made tax estimate payments, and so on and so forth. Because that is really what's going to impact whether you owe or you get a refund each year. All right, guys, that's the video. I really hope this helped you. I felt in my heart I really needed to share this, because it's like, man, it's like, why do you guys need to go spend $300-400 or more to an accountant when hopefully you can see that you can do this. This is so simple. Now that I've walked you through these numbers, I've walked you through how the forms work in a general sense, so you have an understanding of what is actually transpiring on your tax forms, and hopefully it adds clarity and gives you the confidence you need, because once you have the confidence, you're going to see that you can actually do this, guys, in like 10 or 15 minutes. It's really simple. Honest to God, it is. And you can just walk through this and hopefully save hundreds of dollars every year going forward now if you have a basic tax situation. Don't worry, you're not taking business away from me as a CPA. Some of you are like, what are you throwing your business in the garbage? Like, no. My clients have much more complex tax needs, and I don't think most people do. I don't think most people have very complex tax needs. I think if you have a simple tax situation like this, then by all means, if you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. I won't think of any less of you guys if you want to pay somebody else to do it. I don't care. But I just want to show you how easy this is and that you can do this. You can totally do this. In a future video, I'll show you a basic example, and I'll try to produce that very, very soon, before the end of this tax season, of how to file a tax return if you're retired. Because I'm sure a lot of you would love to see that as well. So whether you're young or old, you can do this, guys. It's very simple, and hopefully this is the confidence that you need to move forward and have a better understanding of how some of this income tax stuff works. Unfortunately, school, I don't think will ever teach this, but that gives me the opportunity to teach this. That's the video today, guys. If you liked what you saw today, drop a like. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this. Was this helpful? Do you have a better understanding of how this stuff works now? Do you think you can maybe stop going to your accountant and do this by yourself, because you saw how simple this actually was? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, or if this is still just too confusing. Either way, I would love to hear what you guys think. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you have not done so already, because we make a ton of videos here every single week around finances, investing, and taxes. It is going to help you learn a lot more about this stuff well into the future. So be sure to subscribe, and please, if you really want to support the channel and the work I do here, share this video with others. This could help so many people, I think, across the US who do have any training or knowledge But they need to see that they can do this, and they can do this without spending a lot of money, because we're already spending too much money on tax and paying other people and bills as it is. Why do we have to spend more money doing this? Well, we don't. All right, well, I'll see you in the comments below. Look forward to reading what you have to say. And wherever you're at across the country, I hope you're having a beautiful week and a lovely day. Live life uncaged, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace, guys. Take care.